as a part of my testimony, it still gets me really emotional because it was a situation where I was hanging out with the wrong people. I was hanging out with someone who I thought was my friend, but through that moment, I realized she wasn't. She was not a friend. And it's something that I still often struggle with, even with my friendships now. Like, I'm very, when it comes to my circle, it's very small because of my past experiences. But with my testimony, I was basically crying out to God. I thought I was going to die. I was in a situation where I took a drug. I didn't know it was drugs in a cookie. And I ate the cookie with the drugs in it. And I literally could have died because of the effects. Like, I had no idea. So I didn't even know what I was taking. I wasn't prepped. It was just bad. And I remember sitting in the living room, and the girl who I thought was my friend, she was at the club. I had to leave the club and come home because of the effects that the drugs had on me. And I just remember sitting in the living room crying out because like my heart was pounding and pounding, like it was beating out of my chest, and I was having hallucinations, and I just didn't know if this moment was real, if I was still alive, or if I was dead. And thank God for my mother, because I remember saying, God, send me a sign that I'm still alive. Like, that's how out of my mind I was. And it had to be midnight, and normally my mom is asleep. She called me and she said, hey baby. And when she called me, I was in tears because that was my sign. And I was talking to my mom, and I remember saying, Mama, don't get mad. And anytime you say, Mama, don't get mad, she already mad. What's going on? What? So I said, I think I'm dead. Can you just, it's, I can kind of laugh now because of the situation, but at this time it was very serious. But I said, can you just like tell me I'm alive, because I was out of my mind, literally. And she said, what's going on, Jessica? And then I told her what happened, that I ate a cookie and it didn't agree with me, and I was also drinking. So it was just a lot in my system. And she told me, where are you? So I gave her my address. Mind you, my parents were at least 6 hours away from me at the time, and they got in that car and they was on their way to me. That's how bad I sounded. But I remember calling the ambulance, and during that ride to the hospital, I was out of just my heart was racing, and the paramedic kept telling me, Jessica, you have to calm down. You have to calm down. Your heart and your blood pressure is too high. Your heart is beating too fast. And I just remember them saying, if they can't keep me calm, they're gonna have to pull over. And I remember looking in the glass, and my lips started turning white. That's how bad it was. I was extremely dehydrated. And I remember calling out to the Lord, like, God, I laid everything on the table. If you save my life, I promise I'll stop doing this. I'll stop drinking. I'll stop hanging out with crazy people. I was just listing it all out. And I remember hearing God's voice so clearly, so clearly. He said, you're delivered. And at that moment, it felt like I just snapped out of whatever spell I was in, to the point where even the paramedics was like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, they felt the shift. And from that point, it was just a calm ride to the hospital. And of course, I still had the drugs in my system, but what I was delivered from was the side effects of the drugs. And I know that was nothing but God. Nothing but God. And that is my testimony. And from that day, all the things that I said I was going to stop doing, I have not looked back. It's been a challenge, don't get me wrong, but then I think about what God delivered me from, and that's what keeps me going. So that is my testimony. That's what led me back to Christ, to live fully for Him. And that's one of the reasons why I also decided to do Christian rap, because in most of my songs I share bits and pieces of that testimony.